My name is Emily Matthews, and I feel an urgent need to share something with you that completely changed my life. Truthfully, I've been struggling to find the right words to describe this experience, but it's far too important to keep to myself. On the morning of October 15, 2024, I experienced something beyond anything I had ever imagined possible. For 12 minutes, I was clinically dead. No pulse, no breath. Yet in those 12 minutes, I didn't just fade into oblivion. I went somewhere so vivid and so profound that I'm still trying to comprehend it. What I experienced wasn't just for me. It carried a message that I believe was meant for all of humanity. Let me give you some background. For over 10 years, I've worked as an emergency room nurse. My life has always been rooted in science, in the tangible, the facts, and in the world of medicine. I've witnessed both the darkest and most hopeful moments in people's lives. Grief, strength, despair, and incredible courage. If you told me a year ago that I would be sharing a story about dying and returning with a message from Jesus, I would have thought you were out of your mind. But life has a way of shattering everything we think we know. That morning began just like any other. I barely slept after my daughter's basketball game. You know how your mind races with all the things you need to get done? I woke up early, determined to clear my head with a run. The streets were quiet, still holding on to that peaceful pre-dawn stillness. The air was cool, and a gentle fog hung in the air. I checked my watch. It was 6:08 a.m. Everything felt so normal, so mundane. But then, everything changed. I don't remember the moment of impact, but later I learned that I had been struck by a distracted driver who had been texting while driving. One moment I was crossing the street, alive and well. The next, everything went dark. I thought I would slip into nothingness, just endless darkness and silence. But what happened next defied everything I expected. The first thing I noticed was the light. It wasn't like the sunlight or anything we recognized. It was pure, warm, and alive, radiating around me, enveloping me in a sense of peace that I can't fully explain. When I say peace, I mean the absence of fear, pain, and worry. Everything that had burdened me in life just melted away. It felt like I had finally come home. As I stood there, trying to take it all in, I noticed something even more extraordinary. Vivid, radiant colors that I had never seen before. The air seemed to hum with energy, as though it was vibrating with music that emanated from everywhere, all at once. It wasn't music as we know it. It was as if joy and love had been transformed into sound. Then, I saw someone coming toward me. It was my mother. She had passed away when I was in my early 20s, but here she was, looking more vibrant and youthful than I could have ever remembered. She smiled at me, and there was a glow about her, something divine and pure. "Emily," she said, her voice filled with love. "You don't need to fear. He's waiting for you." Before I could respond or ask what she meant, she reached out and took my hand. In that moment, I felt a connection so deep that every question I had ever had was answered without a word being spoken. It was overwhelming, yet comforting beyond measure. "There is something you must see," she said. Suddenly, the light around me intensified, becoming more focused, and standing before me was Jesus. I can't even begin to describe him in a way that does justice to what I felt in his presence. He wasn't like any image or picture I had ever seen. He exuded a divine, gentle power that radiated love beyond anything I had ever known. His eyes, oh, his eyes, seemed to hold everything. They saw not only who I was, but who I had been and who I was meant to be. It was as though he saw straight into my soul. I fell to my knees, not out of fear, but out of humility. Being in his presence was so profound, so humbling, that words cannot capture the depth of what I felt. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. He reached out, his hand gently settling on my shoulder, yet there was a palpable strength in his touch, one that seemed to radiate both comfort and an unspoken urgency. "Sarah," he said, and his voice, though soft, carried the weight of something far beyond the moment we were sharing. It was as if every word he spoke had been carefully chosen and was meant to pierce through time itself. "There is something you must see, something my people need to understand before I return." His gaze locked with mine, and I felt the depth of his words in my very soul. I knew at that moment that the things he was about to show me would not only change the way I saw the world, but also how I would live in it from that moment forward. And then, with a deep breath, he revealed the first event. A vision so startling and so profoundly real that I could hardly bear to look at it. He called it the Great Distraction, and what unfolded before me was a reflection of the chaos I had long sensed but never fully understood. All around the world, people were ensnared in the glow of their screens, phones, tablets, computers, completely disconnected from the reality around them. I saw families gathered together in the same room, yet each person was lost in their digital universe, heads down, eyes locked on devices. There was no conversation, no laughter, no shared moments. Parents, who should have been leading their children with love and wisdom, were instead just as distracted, their attention divided between their phones and the world they were neglecting. Children were immersed in games, videos, and messages, captured by the addictive pull of technology, missing the priceless moments of connection with those who loved them most. Friends, too, were no better off. Instead of the bonds of true companionship, they were more concerned with virtual validation. How many likes, how many followers, and how many comments they could garner. It was as if their entire sense of self-worth had been reduced to an algorithm, a number, a fleeting interaction in a sea of digital noise. Even the most devout believers, those who once gathered in prayer and worship, had fallen victim to the same trap. They were distracted, lost in the noise of the world, unable to hear the still, small voice of God calling them back to what truly matters. And as I watched, my heart heavy with sorrow, Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both compassion and urgency. "This is how the enemy works," he said, his voice breaking through the fog of confusion that had settled in my mind. "He keeps them distracted, keeps their minds and hearts fixed on the temporary things of this world, so they forget the eternal. They are so focused on the here and now, they lose sight of the forever that awaits them. Tell my people to wake up. Tell them to refocus their hearts and minds on me. The world is in desperate need of them to be present, not just in body, but in spirit. They must return to what is truly important." His words felt like a clarion call, a sharp reminder that we were not meant to live in a state of perpetual distraction. We were meant for so much more. Meant to live in the moment, to connect with those around us, to pursue the things of eternal value, not the fleeting temptations of the temporary. My heart ached with the weight of his message, and I knew then that I had a responsibility to help others see the truth of what he had shown me, to awaken them to the reality that the distractions of this world were not just harmless annoyances, they were distractions from the very purpose of life itself. And just as I began to process the gravity of what I had seen, he shifted the scene before me, unveiling the second event. It was far more unsettling than the first, the Great Deception, he called it. What I saw next was a world entranced, mesmerized by something so beautiful, so alluring, that it was impossible not to be drawn in. The sky above shimmered with ethereal lights, colors I had never seen before, swirling and dancing like some divine aurora. The air was thick with a sense of wonder, as if the very atmosphere was charged with magic. And then, descending from the heavens, were beings of such radiant beauty that they seemed almost too perfect to be real. Their faces were mesmerizing, expressions of peace, kindness, and wisdom. Their voices were like music, each word a melody that soothed the soul and stirred the heart. They spoke of peace, of unity, of enlightenment, promising to show humanity a path to greater understanding, to a new age of harmony. But as I listened, something felt off, a nagging sense that I couldn't quite shake. Their words were honeyed, their promises intoxicating, but beneath the surface, there was something dark, something twisted. As they spoke of unity and peace, I realized their version of peace was not the peace that comes from the truth of God's word. It was a false peace, built on lies and half-truths. Their words mingled elements of truth with falsehoods, carefully crafted to lead people astray. And what was worse, even the most faithful among God's people were being drawn in by the allure of their promises. They were seduced by the beauty of the message, too willing to believe that these beings, who appeared so pure and wise, were messengers of hope. Jesus' voice cut through my thoughts like a sword, firm and unwavering. "These are not of me," he said, his tone grave. "They will mix truth with lies, creating a web so fine that many will fall into it. They will lead many astray, twisting the hearts of my people. Tell my people to stay rooted in my word. For my word is the only foundation that cannot be shaken. It is the only truth that will stand when everything else falls away. Do not be deceived by the shining lights and sweet promises. Stay firm in what you know to be true. His words struck deep into my heart, a sobering reminder that in the last days, deception would not come as something overtly evil, but as something that appeared beautiful, even divine. How easy it would be to be swept away by the allure of these false promises. How many would be deceived, believing in something that seemed to offer peace, but was a trap designed to pull them further from God's truth. I felt a deep sadness well up within me, as if I were witnessing the fall of so many who had been led astray. How could they not see it? How could they not feel the danger beneath the surface? But then I realized, the deception was not just for those outside the faith. It was a warning for all of us. Even those who believed in God's truth must remain vigilant, constantly anchored in His Word, or they too could fall prey to the lies that would come disguised as truth. And in that moment, I understood what I had to do. I had to share this vision. I had to warn my brothers and sisters, not just of the distractions that would pull them away from God, but of the deceptive beauty that would seek to lead them astray. I could no longer stay silent. The time to wake up, to see the truth clearly and act on it, was now. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The third event that Jesus revealed to me was the Great Awakening, a vision that filled my heart with both awe and an overwhelming sense of hope. As I watched, I saw a light, radiant and powerful, spreading across the world, like waves crashing upon the shore. People, once lost in their distractions, were now turning back to God with all their hearts. Families that had been torn apart by the chaos of the world were now united in prayer. Husbands and wives knelt together in reverence. Children gathered around the dinner table in worship, and entire communities came alive with repentance and renewed faith. The earth itself seemed to rejoice, as the very air was charged with a sense of revival and divine presence. Miracles, like something out of a storybook, were happening all around. I saw people who had been sick for years healed in an instant, the lame walking, the blind seeing, the deaf hearing, and those bound in addiction set free. It was as though God's power was flowing like a river, washing away every illness, every affliction, every chain that had held His people captive. I watched as lives were transformed before my very eyes, as individuals who had once walked in darkness were now illuminated by the light of Christ. Their faces, once filled with sorrow and despair, now glowed with the joy of salvation. But as much as this great awakening was a beautiful outpouring of God's love, it came at a great cost. The persecution that followed was harsh and relentless. Believers who had once lived in quiet faith were now under attack, mocked, ridiculed, and even killed for their steadfast devotion to Christ. Families were torn apart, friendships shattered, and churches burned to the ground. But despite the suffering, the joy of the believers remained unshaken. Their faith was resolute, and their hearts filled with a peace that surpassed understanding. They had discovered a truth that no persecution could steal, a joy so deep and abiding that it transcended every hardship. Jesus spoke to me in that moment, His voice full of both love and warning. "My Spirit will move powerfully in these days," He said, His words echoing with a deep sense of authority. "But the cost of following me will be great. The world will hate you as it hated me. But stand firm, for the reward is eternal. This world is passing away, but the treasure I offer is beyond compare. Do not fear the cost. It is nothing compared to the glory that awaits you." I felt the weight of His words settle into my heart, a reminder that following Jesus was not a path of ease, but one of sacrifice and endurance. Yet the promise of eternal reward made every hardship seem small in comparison. The Great Awakening was a beautiful vision, a glimpse of the revival that would sweep across the earth, but it was also a reminder that true faith would be tested by fire. And then, the final event was revealed to me, the Great Return. My breath caught in my throat as the sky above me split open like a curtain, revealing the glory of Christ Himself. He was coming in power and majesty, surrounded by legions of angels, their wings shimmering with the brightness of heaven. The very air vibrated with the sound of their voices, praising God in unison. It was the most breathtaking sight I had ever witnessed. The entire world seemed to hold its breath as He descended, the light of His glory outshining everything else in existence. As He drew closer, every knee in the universe, every person, every being, bowed in awe. The entire creation seemed to fall silent, as if it too recognized the weight of this moment. Every tongue, whether willing or unwilling, confessed that Jesus Christ was Lord. Some did so in trembling awe, their hearts filled with worship and wonder at the sight of the one they had waited for. Others, their faces pale with terror, fell to their knees, realizing too late that the time for repentance had passed. The division between the saved and the lost was laid bare before all, and the reality of eternity became undeniably clear. I could feel the intensity of the moment. This was the culmination of all history, the moment every believer had longed for, and yet, it was also the moment that would bring unspeakable sorrow to those who had rejected Christ. There was no hiding from the truth any longer. Jesus was coming back, and everything would be made right. The injustice, the suffering, the pain of the world, all would be undone in that instant. The righteous would be rewarded, and the wicked would face the consequences of their choices. Jesus spoke again, his voice now filled with a deep, unshakable truth. "This is what awaits," he said, his gaze steady and piercing. "Tell them I am coming soon. Tell them to be ready, for no one knows the day or the hour. The time to prepare is now. Live as though today is the day I will return. Make your hearts ready, for when I come, I will come like a thief in the night, and no one can escape the truth of that moment." As his words resonated within me, I felt a profound sense of urgency in my spirit. The vision began to fade, but the reality of what I had witnessed remained etched into my soul. I remained kneeling before Jesus, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had seen. It was as though the entire universe had paused for that moment, waiting for his voice to reach deep into the depths of my heart. And though the vision was fading, his presence never left me. His words were now etched into the very fabric of my being, a call to action that could not be ignored. There was no turning back. The truth had been revealed to me, and I was entrusted with it. My heart burned with a desire to share this message with the world, to warn them, to encourage them, to help them see the reality of what is coming, so they too could be ready for the return of Christ. The days ahead would be filled with trials, but there was hope, the hope of the great awakening and the promise of the great return. In the silence that followed, I knew what I had to do. I had to stand firm, just as he had commanded. I had to warn my brothers and sisters in Christ. I had to live as though he could return at any moment, with my heart set on the eternal and not the fleeting things of this world. The urgency was real. The time was short. Jesus was coming soon. And I had a part to play in preparing the world for that glorious moment. "Sarah," his voice was soft, yet filled with a power that commanded my attention. "The world is entering a time unlike any it has known. You've seen glimpses of what is to come, but never forget this. I am always with you, and I am always with my people. My love for you is unchanging, my promises unbreakable. Even amid the darkest trials and the deepest chaos, those who trust in me will find a peace that transcends all understanding." As he spoke, his presence seemed to fill the space around me. The light surrounding him grew brighter and warmer, almost as if it had a life of its own, pushing away every trace of fear, every shadow of doubt that had once clouded my heart. I could feel his love, a love so deep, so pure, it was as if he were reaching straight into the core of my being. It was a love that could heal the deepest wounds and calm the most restless of souls. His words were like a balm to my spirit, wrapping me in comfort and assurance. He paused, and his eyes, those eyes full of compassion and strength, locked onto mine. "There will be days ahead when doubt will try to creep in, even for you. But remember this, Sarah. I chose you for this message, not because you are perfect, not because you are without flaws, but because you are willing. You've opened your heart to me, and that is all I need. Trust in my strength, not your own. You are not carrying this message alone. My spirit will walk with you, guide you, and when the time comes, I will give you the words you need." Before I could utter a single word in reply, he placed his hand over my heart. The moment his touch made contact, I felt a rush of love, a tidal wave of compassion and tenderness so profound that it brought tears to my eyes. It was as if every ounce of fear, anxiety, and doubt was wiped away in that single instant, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose. "Tell my people," he continued, his voice now thick with emotion, "that I see their struggles. I know their fears, their failures, their doubts. I am not distant from their pain. I am the God who heals. I am the God who restores. I make all things new. They are never alone. I am with them always. His words resonated deep within my soul. They weren't just words. They were a declaration of his undying love, a promise that no matter the trial, no matter how difficult the road ahead might seem, he would never leave his people. It was a reminder that we are never abandoned, never forsaken. He is with us, through every dark valley, through every storm. His love is unwavering, his faithfulness unfailing. As his hand lifted from my heart, the brilliance of his presence began to fade, but the sense of peace and hope he left behind lingered, filling every corner of my being. It was as if the light itself had imprinted his love into my very soul. I knew in that moment that this vision, this experience, was not just a fleeting encounter but a call to action. The message he had entrusted to me was clear. I had been chosen for this moment, and my work was far from finished. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Now, Sarah, he said, his voice now filled with a gentle but urgent tone, it is time for you to return. Your work is not done. You have much to share. Tell them, my beloved, that I am coming soon. With those words, the experience began to fade, the light shrinking, collapsing inward as if being drawn into a tiny pinhole of brightness. The music, the overwhelming sense of peace, all of it seemed to be sucked away, leaving me with a strange emptiness, as though the very fabric of that moment was unraveling. And then I felt it, an abrupt jolt, a sharp pull, a rush of sensations. It was as if my very soul had been yanked from the divine embrace and thrust back into my body. My chest burned, as though fire had been reignited deep within me. I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on me again, the exhaustion, the pain, the rawness of human existence. My lungs heaved, gasping for air, drawing in oxygen with a desperation I had never known before. It felt as though I had been underwater for an eternity and had finally been allowed to breathe again. I opened my eyes to the harsh brightness of the world around me, the faces of paramedics hovering over me, their expressions a mix of shock and relief. I could hear the frantic beeping of machines and the hurried voices of those around me, but it all felt distant, as though I were hearing everything through a thick fog. I tried to speak, but my voice was weak, barely a whisper. She's awake, one of the paramedics said, their voice laced with a sense of disbelief. She's alive. Tears stung my eyes, not from the pain, but from the weight of what I had just experienced. The love, the peace, the assurance I had felt. How could it be real when everything around me felt so chaotic and uncertain? And yet, deep within my heart, I knew the truth of what he had said. I am with you always. At that moment, I felt his presence like never before, as if he were right there beside me, holding me close, reminding me that no matter the circumstances, he was always near. The experience had left me changed. The message he had given me, the weight of his love and his calling, was now etched into the very core of my being. I couldn't escape it. And I didn't want to. I had been sent back with a mission, a message for his people. And though the road ahead would be uncertain, one thing was clear. His love would be my anchor, his promise my strength, and his spirit my guide. Tell them I am coming soon, I whispered to myself, the words reverberating through me, a declaration that would never fade. I had a purpose now, one that I could never deny. The world was waiting, and I would answer the call. She's back, one of the paramedics whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and awe. We've got her back. The words echoed in my ears, but it felt like they belonged to another world, one far removed from the moment I was in. I could barely move my body, and my voice felt like a distant memory, stuck, trapped, unable to break free. Yet, the tears streaming down my face were not from the excruciating pain that should have consumed me. No, these tears were born of something far deeper, an overwhelming sense of gratitude, of awe, of wonder at what I had just experienced. I wanted to scream it out, to tell the paramedics, the doctors, and everyone around me what had just happened. But the words were trapped inside me as if the weight of the vision I had witnessed was too immense for mere speech. All I could do was grasp the hand of one of the paramedics, my fingers trembling as I held onto them, desperately trying to communicate what my heart was bursting to say. The grip of my hand was weak, but I attempted to convey the magnitude of what I had seen and what I had felt. Words couldn't capture it, but my touch was an effort to make them feel it, to somehow share the indescribable peace, love, and hope that had overwhelmed me in that moment. The days that followed were like a blur, a whirlwind of sensations, both physical and emotional, that I could hardly process. The pain from my injuries, though real, seemed so small in comparison to the enormity of what I had just experienced. My body was battered and bruised, but my spirit, somehow, felt untouched, as though the supernatural presence I had encountered had shielded me from true harm. It felt like I was living in two worlds at once, the world of recovery, with its endless doctor's visits and medical jargon, and the world of divine revelation, where I had witnessed the very future of humanity unfold before me. Doctors were baffled. They couldn't explain it. "It's a miracle," one of them said, shaking their head in disbelief. "Your survival, your recovery. It doesn't make sense. It's like your body is healing at a rate we've never seen before. It's incredible." Their words, though well-meaning, felt hollow to me. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. I knew the truth. The miraculous healing was no accident. It wasn't just luck or coincidence. It was the power of the vision I had received, the divine presence I had encountered, that had brought me back. During those long days of recovery, when I lay in the sterile confines of the hospital room, I couldn't help but replay everything I had witnessed. My mind raced over every detail, every word. My Father's voice, calling me to awaken, to see the truth. Jesus' presence is so real and so powerful, filling every corner of the room with love and authority. And then the visions, the great distraction, the great deception, the great awakening, and the great return. Each event was vivid in my memory, each one more pressing than the last. The urgency of the message burned within me. The peace I had felt was now mingled with a sense of responsibility. I had to share this. No matter how difficult, no matter how impossible it might seem, I could not remain silent. The truth of what I had seen, the call to prepare for what was coming, was too important. It wasn't just a warning, it was a lifeline. The world needed to know. My heart ached with the weight of it. How could I keep something so life-altering to myself? The clarity I now possessed was unshakable. I knew, deep in my soul, that I had been chosen for this. I had seen the future, I had felt the love and power of God in ways I never imagined, and now I had a purpose. The call to share this message was my responsibility, one I couldn't ignore. But even amid that clarity, fear crept in. What if no one believed me? What if they thought I was just another person lost in delusion? Another one of those who had a miraculous experience but couldn't explain it? I knew that the message would be hard to accept. The truth always is. But I also knew that there would be people who needed to hear it, who needed to be awakened, just as I had been. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I felt a stirring in my heart. This is just the beginning. The journey ahead was going to be anything but easy, but I was no longer the same person. The fire that had been ignited within me in that divine encounter could never be extinguished. It was a call to action, a mandate that could not be ignored. I had seen the signs, I had felt the weight of the message, and now I had to share it, no matter the cost. As I reflect on everything I've just shared with you, I can't help but feel the weight of the message and the urgency of it all. We are all at a crossroads, facing distractions, deceptions, and challenges. But we are also given the gift of awakening, hope, and the promise of a future that is filled with peace. So, what have you learned so far from the vision and the message I've shared? How does it resonate with your life today? I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on that. Is there something you've learned that you can apply to your daily life? Something that can shift the way you approach the world, your relationships, and your faith? I invite you to comment below this video and share one thing you've learned that you will practice in your life going forward. Let's engage in this conversation together. Your thoughts matter, and I believe that by sharing, we can inspire and support each other on this journey. If you found value in this video, please leave your comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support means the world, and I'm so grateful to be on this journey with all of you. Take care, and remember, the future is in your hands.